Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London, and today it's my privilege to review an excellent book from Law Brief Publishing, who will be, people will know who Law Brief Publishing are. They publish some very interesting, easy to read books which are very helpful for both practitioners and researchers. This one is a practical guide to the law of driverless cars. Now, it's been so popular, it's now in a second edition, and it's been written by Glassbrook, Emma Northey and Scarlett Milligan. It's available both as a paperback, which I've got here, and it's also an ebook. And I've given a title, I discussed the book with Elizabeth, and I decided to write this review myself, having read the book and liked it. I've given the title, The Legal Build-Up to the Advent of Driverless Cars, brilliantly explained by Law Brief Publishing. And I say that because we're talking about legislation here. We're talking about an interesting concept. I've actually seen a driverless car, never driven one obviously, or been in one, except as a sort of show model at a conference. And I found it very interesting, incredibly complicated, a very great deal of electronics in it, cameras all over the place, all sorts of things, very, very expensive. The question is it the future? The answer is almost certainly it is. How it's going to emerge, I do not know. But in the meantime, we've got to start thinking about what sort of legal issues are going to arise, because you can think of them immediately, both in criminal and in civil law. Let's look at the book first of all. This is a paperback, purple cover. There we go. There's the front of it. You probably see. Then there's the spine. Probably can't see much of that. Then the back again, reversed out stuff, very difficult to read. You can see all of the blurb for previous publications. I have reviewed a few of their publications. They're all of a very high standard, these books. And in fact, at the back of this book, you have more books by Law Brief Publishing. And the reason I'm reviewing this book, which they've published a lot of books on very relevant current law issues. This one took my eye as being important. Now, here's the front page, and then there's some blurb there from Law Brief Publishing, and then you've got a preface. I've used a little bit of what's in the preface for the review. That comes from the three editors, and it's dated the 1st of October 2019. Of course, I'm reviewing this in early 2020. There's a website as well to have a look at, and then you've got the various chapter headings for the parts, 13 chapters, 200 odd pages, an introduction, objectives of the work itself, what this book is about, the language of what is called driverless, terms, then the classification of existing vehicles and CAVs as they're called. Then you've got all this stuff. We're entering a new world of terminology again, a note on law and jurisdiction, again an important area I think for people, footnotes, then the end of the beginning and so forth, because you can see there are a lot of changes. Where are we now? Written by Scarlett. And of course we've then got the objectives of the chapter. You see the structure, very helpful, very easy to read, and just going through the occasional footnote you can see, but no paragraph numbering. And the footnotes really are linked to websites, and of course that, if you're using the ebook, that will make life a lot easier, and you do have useful conclusions so you know where we're going with the work. Now, let me just put that there, I hope it doesn't fall over. Now, what do we say? We say this in a short review. A few years ago, the concept of the driverless car was purely for science fiction writers, an unrealistic possibility, I would suggest, or advance, for the motoring public in the 21st century, because we're really looking at stuff that's way in the future, but we're actually there now. I'm getting a lot older, as everybody else is, who's been involved in this for a long time. We're still seeing that there are big changes taking place with motoring itself, the law of motoring, if you want to put it that way, which encompasses everything. So unsurprisingly, Law Brief publications have a runaway success, if I can use that term, with their practical guide for the law of driverless cars, which is now available in the second edition. And it is a runaway success because it's been written by 3 practising barristers, Alex Glassbrook, Emma Northey and Scarlett Milligan. And it runs to well over 200 pages, 13 chapters, in 3 parts, which are Where Are We Now?, the Automated and Electric Vehicles Act 2018, and the Automated Vehicle Law Issues, which are outside the 2018 Act. And as the authors say in their introduction, with the increase in numbers of electric vehicles, automated driving systems are becoming widespread. And of course that's going to come in with things like the Nissan Leaf, which I haven't yet driven, but it's going to be very interesting to see what that's like in terms of an electric vehicle, because we're now looking from that, moving on one more to the driverless. It's a worrying time, of course, for many drivers, especially older persons like my good self, because the next phase in the evolution of road vehicles towards the era of fully automated cars is actually nearly upon us, whether we like it or not. We're not ready for it, of course, but we never are. Hence the fact that this new edition of this work is well thought of and a popular text, and will probably be updated again, because we've only just started, from what I can see, in the direction, the journey we are now taking. Another little pun, but there we go. That's the way it is at the moment. Now, since the publication of the first edition, the corner piece legislation, Automated and Electric Vehicles Act 2018, the 2018 Act, has appeared on the British Statute Book, though it's yet to be brought into force, mainly because there's still a lot of delay. A lot of this is to do with our natural reticence, Parliament's natural reticence, and of course Brexit. Now, we know where we're going at the moment with Brexit, because next week we're leaving, and then we'll see where we go, because we're going to get back to the domestic agenda big time, because there's so much that needs to be done. Now, what the authors have proved here is to move the new edition away from mere theoretical discussions and towards an analysis of that legislation, making it a most useful practical guide in our view, because the legislation we've got, obviously, as though it's not already brought into force, is there. We have to know what we're going to do. What they've done here, the authors they've included other legal problems which will be engaged by the introduction of all forms of automated driving systems in the years to come. And it is basically a revolution in its own way, if you think about it. I mean, it's scary to a certain extent, because there are so many unknowns in this, but we've got to move forward. It must be said then that there are probably many unanswered questions still out there, and issues which many of us have not really thought through properly at this stage, although the start has to be made, and it's done so in my view very well with this text. So the edition gives us a highly useful practical and contemporary commentary on the leading questions of the day, posing these points specifically, which are mentioned in the blurb here. When the technology arrives, how will courts react? What arguments might emerge? What does the legislation currently cover? Obviously, think about the common law side of it, think about the case law, and then think about the statutes already there. What shape might future laws take in a world of artificially intelligent vehicles? Again, AI is not something we can ignore. I think probably it's a bit overemphasized sometimes, and there are some rather dreamy people around on the sci-fi stage who think all sorts of things are going to happen which won't. But nevertheless, AI is with us. These are good questions, therefore, and just the start of what could well be a most interesting and developing area of modern law in the 2020s. And we do feel, of course, that all drivers considering this new technology should get this book now, because it covers key topics which include RTAs, road traffic accidents. Other areas of interest, of course, are well covered here. That's product liability claims, privacy, the ways in which society might regulate these types of vehicles, and so on. And let me conclude by saying it's not an understatement to say that a practical guide to the Law of Driverless Cars, 2nd edition, is a pathfinder containing indispensable guidance to our laws of automated vehicles and to the legal problems and to the solutions of our near future in not just England and Wales, but also, of course, in Scotland, thanks to the work of the respective law commissions and their joint consultation paper, rightly described as a masterwork by the people in this book. Watch this space then. with Law Brief Publications for further news as driverless cars become science fact. That's where we're going. And that's why I think this could be so interesting. And even if you've got a passing interest in it, I'm sure you will find this well worth reading. It doesn't take long to read through, and it will give you some indication of where we're going. The paperback edition, this one here, I understand came out on the 6th of November, and there is, of course, the ebook to go with it. Let me just have one last look at the book. There it is. There's the spine, which you can see there, and in the back. You probably can't make too much out of the back. But if I open it in the middle, Chapter 7, the new regulations, written by Emma. And this is, so you've got an introduction. You've got a beginning, a middle, and an end for each of the chapters. The introduction is system of regulation of road vehicles. Obviously comprises several elements. Then goes listing the objectives of what is happening now in this chapter. Current system of regulation of road vehicles, and then where we go from there. So someone doing the driving test might find this quite interesting, I think, as well. Then, of course, as you can see here, you've got nice lots of subheads. You've got some footnoting as well, which I think will be a very great help. Anyway, big thank you to all concerned. I'd like to thank obviously Tim and Gary at Law Brief Publishing for the work that they have done on this, and all the other books that they publish. I don't review many of their works, but they are a great contribution. You make our lives a lot easier. Thank you. Bye-bye.